The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
Ripple's partial court win against the SEC could be positive for Coinbase's stock, according to our next guest, Needham Company senior research analyst John Todaro. Welcome, John. Let's get right into this here. I feel like I can guess why you think this would be good for Coinbase's stock, because, ostensibly this is a sign of regulatory clarity, and, this is seen by some people as like a positive ruling. But I mean, it is a partial ruling, right? It's a partial victory. There's a lot of mixed opinions in the crypto community. Some people saying that this is just as confusing as anything else, and it doesn't really bring regulatory clarity. And B, it's not even that good. Like, this might not even go that well. So why, given all those concerns, do you still see this as positive for Coinbase?
Yeah, sure. So I think it removes the major concern, which was Coinbase could lose 30% plus of its revenue because it was going to have to delist most altcoins. This ruling looks like that might not be the case. And in fact, Coinbase has come out and relisted XRP. So if anything, Coinbase is viewing it as, okay, we should go out and list other assets versus we need to go out and delist a ton of assets. So I think it does kind of remove some of those concerns that along the way, Coinbase might have to delist a lot of assets, which is going to be a big deterrent to their exchange business, which is where they get most of their revenue from. So I do think the ruling is positive from that standpoint, and it does give institutional investors a little bit more clarity in how this can play out. And now you can start digging into Coinbase's fundamentals a bit more versus the stock only moving just on regulatory concerns or positive regulatory announcements.
Well, I guess, part of the issue is that it's still just one court, right? So like ostensibly like this could be pushed back. So it's not like totally a done deal. But I guess my other question, which is slightly different, is just like, this is generally expected to go on for years, this Coinbase battle. And I'm just confused about where Coinbase is getting this war chest from. Coinbase hasn't been doing that well. It wasn't making money off transaction fees. So where are they getting these like millions and millions of dollars to sustain this long battle with the SEC? I just honestly, just on an economic level, I don't totally understand where this money is coming from and how this could possibly be good for their stock, when A, they're so distracted by this, but B, they're just spending so much money on legal fees.
Well, they still have billions in cash on the balance sheet, so they do still have a somewhat padded balance sheet. But this is a fight they have to do, right? So if Coinbase says, you know what, we're not going to put the $50, $100 million into the court battles, we're just going to go end our exchange business, I don't think that would be good for the stock either. So it's these regulatory issues obviously aren't great for the stock, but really kind of what's the alternative for Coinbase? All right. So this is a core part of their business that they need regulatory clarity on. And I'm sure Coinbase would love not only just regulatory clarity, but regulatory clarity that's in their direction, that's more favorable, saying you can continue to support all the crypto assets you have on the platform versus you have to delist a number of them.
Even before this partial win with XRP, Coinbase's stock was rising as they faced lawsuits from the SEC, as there was a lot of clarity missing on what was going to happen with these tokens that are listed in that lawsuit. And I must point out that murkiness still exists. Why do you think the stock was rising at that point before we got this partial ruling?
Yeah, so you obviously and I do want to be clear, you still have the regulatory uncertainty and you still have some regulatory concerns on the stock. As you both mentioned, this was one court case. It's certainly not a done deal. I think the stock was rising before that off the Bitcoin ETF applications. So a lot of them had Coinbase either as a custodian. They announced market surveillance agreements with Coinbase. So that it was a positive for Coinbase that these large institutional firms that were going to launch Bitcoin ETFs were relying and trusting Coinbase to some extent. So Coinbase certainly, I think on the back of that, looks like really the only kind of adult left in the room in crypto, so to speak, at the exchange level. FTX is obviously gone. There's kind of ongoing issues with Binance. So Coinbase is the de facto large remaining player. So I think from that, those applications saying, look, institutions are still interested in the space, and Coinbase is a key integral part of the system, then I think that was a positive read through the stock. So I think some of that rise leading into this court case wasn't necessarily views on the court case. I think it was more so those Bitcoin ETF applications.
What's your current price target and rating on Coinbase?
So we're buy rated. We have a $120 price target. So we do think there's some regulatory clarity that is starting to pave the way for a way where the stock can work. You still need to get volumes back, right? July volumes are okay, but what I would say is Q2, which they're going to do Q2 earnings in a few weeks here, that should be expected to be very poor. In fact, volume should be the lowest for the quarter for Q2, that is, since Coinbase came out as a public company. So investors should certainly be aware that this quarter that's coming up, it's going to look like it's going to be a bad quarter, but a lot of that should be priced in the stock now. Volume numbers have been out there a while. There shouldn't be anything too unexpected in there. And now folks should start looking at, well, what's coming up next? And you got the Bitcoin halving, which is historically coinciding with higher crypto prices. You have these ETF applications. You do have a little bit more of a positive view on regulation now. And you are starting to see that flow into volumes a little bit. As I mentioned, July volumes are looking better than June. So June could be kind of the bottom for that retail volume. But that being said, you do need retail volumes to come back for Coinbase stock to work.
Yeah, I mean, that's been kind of a problem for a while, right? I mean, we've sort of seen this hitting Coinbase's earnings for a while. And I feel like one of the things that a lot of people don't realize about Coinbase is how much of the revenue comes from USDC and interest on USDC. Like, that's kind of how they were making up for some of the shortfall. And I've mentioned this to a bunch of analysts, and everyone's just like, oh, yeah, sure, that's cool. I see this as like a tad concerning, just because, you know, to some degree, an investment in Coinbase is now an investment in USDC, and it's like it's kind of all in one stable coin. It just, I don't know. It's based on, you know, it's sort of predicated on interest rates being where they are. And I mean, do you see this as potentially concerning at all?
Yeah, the fact that USDC market cap is kind of kept going lower is an issue. It's a little bit offset by higher rates. So rates keep rising, but the USDC market keeps bleeding lower. They need to get USDC market cap to stop bleeding lower. And to your point, yeah, you do have a risk where it's one stable coin. And there could be regulatory issues around stable coins as well. So if regulations come out that negatively impact USDC, that could be a big impact to Coinbase, sure. Now, on the flip side, if you do see rates start to get cut or start to get lowered here, they're going to take an interest income hit on USDC. But you would think maybe retail volumes would come back in a positive way. Bitcoin maybe start rallying quite a bit if you see a Fed policy shift. So in our view, I think they would more than make up for the loss on that interest income if there was a big Fed policy shift. And crypto likely would do pretty well off that, and you'd bring in a lot of those retail volumes. And at this point, Coinbase actually has a pretty large spread that they charge on retail clients. So if you do get retail volumes back, and if they keep that spread that they've had over the last quarter or so, they're going to do more revenue than they did before. If they did the same volumes they did in 21, say they do that in 24, they're going to have much more revenue because they now charge quite a bit more.
All right, John, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Of course. Thanks for having me.
That was Needham Company Senior Research Analyst John Todaro.